I wrote it because I just think it's outrageous that nobody in Washington seems to be doing anything about this. Like, once I started reaching out to officials and asking them, so what do you think about this? Like, isn't this wrong? Like, what are you going to do about this? Governor Bob Ferguson responded, Mayor Bruce Harrell responded, the police department responded. It took me, weeks to report the story out or this column out, and I did end up, by being persistent, end up getting responses from officials.
Well, welcome again to Chino Y Chicano. I'm Enrique Serna, and welcome to my good friend Lilly Fowler. Lilly and I actually used to work at KCTS 9, now known as Cascade Public Media. Actually, she was a very good reporter that worked on Crosscut, and I was a not so great reporter that worked at KCTS 9. I had my moments, right, Lily? So anyway, how long did you work at Crosscut?
It's a good while. It was 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you moved over to what? KKNX, doing
Yeah.
public. You've done public
Mhm.
media before, doing radio stuff. Now you're at KEXP, and you're a producer there. But like most of us that have journalism backgrounds, we're all addicted. We can't seem to give it up. So you're still writing and doing and teaching, right?
Right. I teach audio journalism at the University of Washington, and I'm writing a column for the South Seattle Emerald.
So that is why I wanted to talk to you, because I saw the column. It was titled "Masked Men Are Detaining People. When Will Washington's Leaders Protect Us?" I want to read a little bit, a couple of paragraphs that you wrote here. There are apparently hundreds of men who work for the Department of Homeland Security, and specifically ICE, who are too cowardly or ashamed to show their face when they detain someone. Can't say I blame them. I'd be ashamed too if my primary job was profiling and arresting brown people. It's as if we're supposed to assume any masked men who tackle immigrants are legit and work for the federal government. I don't know about you, but if a masked man came at me, I'd fight back. And I keep, that's good. I keep thinking, like, what would I do as a brown guy if I had a masked guy with tactical gear and all these other guys? And they all seem to be really overweight to me. So I'm thinking, like, I probably can't outrun them. Not a good idea. But, to be honest with you, I'm an American citizen. I was born here, but I'm brown, and I carry my passport with me now. Because
Yeah.
I'm worried, and maybe I don't have any. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive. But what made you decide to write this column?
I'm from Mexico. Unlike you, I was actually born there, grew up on the border, but also, unlike you, I am not brown. I am a white Latina
A
and
güera, you're a blanca.
oh, güerita, yeah,
Güerita,
güerita.
yeah.
I didn't write it so much coming because I'm concerned. Although ICE has picked up people with uh US citizens and green cards and that sort of thing. But I wrote it because I just think it's outrageous that nobody in Washington seems to be doing anything about this. And this includes, the supposed progressive hotbed of Seattle. I have not heard Harrell say, and Mayor Bruce Harrell say anything about it. He did give me a statement. Like, once I started reaching out to officials and asking them, so what do you think about this? Like, isn't this wrong? Like, what are you going to do about this? Governor Bob Ferguson responded, Mayor Bruce Harrell responded, the police department responded. It took me, weeks to report the story out or this column out, and I did end up, by being persistent, end up getting responses from officials. But I just wondered, like, why haven't I heard about some public meeting about this where people can voice their concerns and there can be some kind of conversation about possible solutions? That's what I would expect as somebody who lives here, and I wasn't hearing anything. And so, you mentioned, not being able to turn this journalism brain off. I mean, I was actually in Mexico when I was writing this, but I was seeing the headlines coming from the US and Seattle, including something that happened recently, which is, this woman who was known as the food lady because she was a street vendor. She got picked up in White Center. And apparently, this is according to Seattle Times column, apparently people in White Center were confused about whether or not that was actually ICE who picked her up or if it was some bounty hunters.
Right.
And that should not be happening in the United States.
Well, I think what is disturbing as we watch so much of this kind of unfold is that uh, they don't identify themselves. I mean, they're in tactical gear, wearing the masks, but we're seeing a lot of just aggressive behavior, aggressive tactics, you know, breaking of windows to get to somebody, showing up at, in some cases, uh, daycares or, you know, graduations for kids, these types of things. But they don't identify themselves. They clearly aren't doing the, okay, we have a warrant in a lot of cases, or even if they do, not showing a judicial warrant. It's all about grabbing somebody, and it does seem like it's just this is kidnapping of people. That to me is just totally outrageous and disturbing. And I think what bothers me a lot is that, are people really as outraged as we are about it? I don't know.
Right. And that's what bothered me. I mean, why isn't the police? I mean, so not only are they, going to locations that were previously considered too sensitive for ICE to be at, right? So schools, churches, that sort of thing. But and they're not identifying themselves, but they're impersonating police. Like some of them say police on their chest, and they are not, in fact, police. And so I asked the police department, like, don't you guys care that there's like people walking around saying they're police when they're not? And
Well, we don't know. We don't know. Are they actually ICE, or are they bounty hunters? Or are they uh, white supremacists that are wearing the gear?
right.
Could be all of that.
Right. And so I started to look into, I mean, I was curious about what laws there are already in place. And they are supposed to identify themselves as immigration officers and state the reason for the arrest, but they're not required right now to identify themselves as by name or by badge number. Um, they're those kinds of details are important to hold federal officials accountable, and that is not happening right now, and there's not a law that exists right now that mandates that.
So, on the federal level, isn't there an effort underway to try to establish something or do something about that?
Yeah, there's been Democratic lawmakers who have already introduced legislation that would require that kind of information from ICE and Border Patrol. But what bothers me, and still bothers me, is there isn't more of an effort here locally.
Right.
And to give you an example, in Los Angeles, city council members started speaking up about what was happening there and the raids, and that, you can't have these masked men doing that when we don't even know who they are. And so now the police department there has started checking credentials and looking for any criminal behavior. Uh, Spokane actually did that just a couple weeks ago, where they started checking for that sort of thing. So then you ask for yourself, like, why hasn't Seattle police done anything about this? I mean, here is a situation where they could actually do something useful to try to keep the community safe, and yet I'm hearing nothing from them.
How long did it take for you to get a statement from the police department?
About 4 tries. I kept coming back at them.
Did
It
it
was
was it like a week or two or what? Or
it
just
was a few weeks.
not that long?
I didn't think. I mean, I should say, we're in the summer. It's July. Officials are often, as you know, like slow to respond during this time. But
That's
It's
weak.
actually
That's weak. Come on. This is because
so is
this is happening around the country. You
no,
know.
of course, but I was actually surprised. I thought they're just gonna ignore me. And they did finally respond, but their response was pretty weak because what they said was like, well, we have nothing to say about what ICE does. We can't speak to what they do. What we can say is that if people think that something criminal is going on, like, call 911. And I just think, like, are you kidding me? Like, why aren't you more proactively doing something when you see that this is happening all over the country and that there have already been like serious crimes committed by people impersonating ICE? I mean, we're talking about like women raped because somebody impersonated ICE and threatened a woman,
Hmm. Yeah.
That happened in North Carolina, but it's
Really.
only a matter of time before that happens here if officials don't step up.
How long ago in North Carolina was this reported?
I mean, this was recent. There was a man in North Carolina who told a woman that he was with ICE and said that if she threatened her and said if she didn't have sexual relations with him, that he was going to deport her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about within the last few months, but that's just one incident. There have been other incidents around the country.
Now, how about getting response from Ferguson and others about it? Did it take some time to get that, or?
Ferguson's office did tell me that they wanted to be on the record because they didn't want anyone to think that Ferguson does not care about this issue. So they were pretty responsive.
Yeah.
Harrell's office was responsive once I got on their radar. Again, like, it shouldn't take a reporter having to ask them for statements for the public to know where they stand on this. This should be a press conference after press conference after press conference, them announcing what they're going to do to protect the public.
Do you think they might have responded more quickly if you'd been with the Seattle Times or some other outlet rather than the Herald, the Emerald? Not to say that the Emerald isn't credible, that's for sure, because it is.
No, that's a good question. It's actually a conversation I just had this morning with my editor. It's hard to say. My editor, who's been at the Emerald for longer than I have, said that he noticed there was a big difference between the kind of response he would get from officials at the Emerald versus KUW, which he used to work at. I mean, I know how to be aggressive, but it was a question that I asked myself too. I do have, like, I know all these people and I've reported and I've talked to them at other outlets, so I think that helped me. But
Lilly is not a rookie. Let's put it that way. You
I'm
aren't.
not a rookie, but
You've been out there for at some time. So yeah.
but I don't know how, so I'm not sure because Bruce Harrell also had an op-ed at the Emerald recently. So I think there is a part of them that realize that's an outlet that people in South Seattle pay attention to, and they need to be talking to those constituents too.
You also talked to a professor at the University of Washington about this as well. And tell me about her and what the feedback you got.
I thought she had a really good point and one that I actually had not thought of.
What was her name again?
Angelica Chasaro.
Okay.
And she's a law professor at the University of Washington. And I am somebody who I reported on the shooting of Michael Brown in St. Louis, way back when. And I remember at that point when people were talking about police brutality and that sort of thing, and we were not talking about ICE then, but we're talking about police. It was all about reform, 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 not about abolishing the police. It was all about how can we reform the police department to make them better. Well, fast forward all these years later, in my opinion, we're not in a much better place. And so what she said was, this sounds like those kinds of conversations, like even unmasking ICE, unmasking laws won't do much because they'll just write it in a way where officials can justify the masking. They'll say like, well, it was just too dangerous in this circumstance or what have you. And so it'll continue, or they'll you know, create harm in some other way. That's not about the unmasking. It's about just what they're doing overall to the community.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the goal here is to scare people. And also, uh, when you have not just a couple of ICE agents show up to detain or arrest someone, but also the process they go to. But in some cases, they got like 4 or 5 people or 6 that show up in tactical gear and with weapons. So that part of it, of course, you're going to scare people. And I think that that's really part of the effort here is just to scare the community and chase people away.
Undocumented, they're scaring US citizens, they're scaring green card holders. There's no limit, you know? They're scaring white people in the community who know the food lady down the street and value her. And uh, so I don't know how and when it's going to stop. But what I do know is that Washington officials should be pushing back. And I think they should be pushing back more forcefully. And I got to wonder, like, are they scared about speaking up to the federal, you know, federal government? Are they scared about what consequences there might be?
Yeah, you
Because
wonder.
we've seen,
Yeah, yeah,
you've seen what the administration has done to universities, to all kinds of entities.
right, right.
It just seems, you know, there's been a lot written about this, that it just seems like they're trying to meet some quota,
Oh, yeah.
right, of arrests. And so what criteria are they using for who they pick up and where they go? And it just seems like anything is up for grabs as long as they meet that quota,
Yeah.
or try to meet that quota, because the majority of people who they're arresting at this point don't have a criminal history.
Well, I think that that has a lot to do with it. And the guy that's heading this up for Trump is that Stephen Miller, who, in some respects is, I think, running the White House. I did notice something that was reported in The Guardian today. It's a Guardian analysis of arrest and deportation data under Trump. And it revealed that in June of this year, average daily arrests were up 268% compared with June of 2024. ICE is increasingly targeting any and all unauthorized immigrants, including people who have no criminal records. The majority of people being arrested by ICE now have no criminal convictions. Detention facilities have been increasingly overcrowded, and the U.S. system is over capacity by more than 13,500 people, and the U.S. government has deported more than 8,100 people to countries that are not their home country.
I saw that headline too. And the other headline I saw was from the New York Times about Latino voters and how they feel about voting for Trump now.
Yeah.
And some of them say like, well, I didn't think they were going to pick up the food lady. I thought they were going to pick up, you know, the criminals only. And I'm sorry, but I just got like, why did you think that? Why did you think they weren't going to go after everybody? Of course they're picking. That's what he said all along.
The only reason it didn't happen the first time around that Trump was in office, because Stephen Miller was part of the administration then, was because you had a different set of people that were part of his administration that had that stopped Trump in many ways, or Stephen Miller from taking these kinds of actions. Now it's different because he has the people that are really the yes, Mr. President, we'll do whatever you say. And that's what is happening now. So that's what makes it more disturbing. Actually, I'm really glad that you wrote this because I think it's an important. It's just important to address this, and I do think that our local and county and state officials and our federal representatives in Congress need to address this because this is not the America I think that we have in the past. And if you let stuff like this go, hey, who's next? So that's what bothers me more than anything else. Could
Absolutely.
be you. So yeah. Hey, also wanted to talk to you a little bit since both of us worked in public media. Your thoughts on the defunding of NPR and PBS. I know that you still have folks that you talk to in the business. What are they saying about the possible impact?
Yeah, and KXP was impacted too.
Yeah, it is a public media
It's
radio
a public
station.
media station. It was
Yeah.
impacted too. Not as heavily as some other stations. You know, um, I don't usually consider myself an optimistic person, but in on this issue, I actually would tell people, I told people, look, all we need is some like Republicans in some rural places
Yeah.
who are like, nope, you're not going to get rid of my station. Like they report on like the farms, the whatever, we're going to have enough holdouts that it's not going to pass. Well, I was wrong. It wasn't even hard, it seemed. It was easy. They made some adjustments and it passed. And the thing about this is, so KXP held an emergency drive right before it happened. We were able to raise $500,000. KUW raised, I think, like about $1 million in
It's
an
about
emergency drive.
1.5 in one day. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty good.
after it happened. So the silver lining here is that people are stepping up and people are obviously like really upset about this too. But what uh the folks who are really in danger are those small stations in more rural areas.
Right.
And it was never about the big NPR stations. It was never going to be about KUW. I think it's like 5% of their budget. But in other places, it's like 40% of their budget, And so how many of those are going to disappear?
Now for KEXP, what kind of federal funding do they get, and for what? For what?
I think it was from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. I think we get some money from them.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's a small percentage of our overall budget. It's not like other places. I mean, you grew up in Yakima. I
Yeah.
mean, are they going to be okay?
That's a good question. I was actually going to check and see about Radio Cadena, which is a Spanish language uh, public station over there. Really, it's that small station that serves that Spanish language community, agricultural and others that are over there. I need to check in with them to see what kind of impact it's going to have on them. I think I don't know so much about, like Northwest Public Radio. I mean, I think anything is going to hurt them. But I listened to some of the interviews with small station operators in like Alaska and also in the South, and uh, for them, it's really that station that offers information, particularly about weather, which,
Right.
in Alaska, when you're hit by, an earthquake or a tsunami and getting the word out about that, in the South, where, hurricanes, tornadoes, and all these other things are happening, that's a source that, could potentially save lives. So cutting out that funding is really just stupid because you're
Yeah.
hurting those people. So again, I think it comes back to those folks say, geez, I didn't think this would ever happen to us. Well, here,
Right.
open your eyes, folks. It's going to happen to anybody, and everybody needs to be aware of this, that, it could be you, and you could be affected by all of this somewhere down the line. So again, I think that part of it is amazing to me. People who think that, well, you can't believe this is happening, because that's just it is. It's going to happen, and I think again that's where it's important for people to speak up and speak out, or for journalists like you to write these articles that touch on these areas that need to be uh, talked about, and all of that, because it's our community and everybody's going to be affected by it more than that. So I think that's an
Yeah.
important thing. So are you hopeful at all that public media is going to survive?
I actually think who they were going after is going to be just fine. Like NPR at large, the big stations, LA, Seattle, New York. I think those stations are going to be fine. I think uh I think they're going to survive just fine. So I think I think they missed their target completely. I think the internet the folks who aren't going to be fine or might not be fine are these folks in more rural places. And I don't think that's who the Trump administration was going after. I mean, I don't think you're going to still hear on NPR critical coverage of Trump,
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I think one of the things I heard a congressman from this state, who's a first-term congressman, regarding these cuts, he said, well, the problem with NPR and public media and PBS is that they don't tell both sides, which made me want to gag because, I mean, that really is, to make a statement like that, and particularly about public media, where our ethics and our standards are really high, where you try to get both sides of the story. It's just, that's such a ridiculous thing to say. And particularly when that person would probably go on Fox, and where they're not going to tell both sides of the story, or most cable folks aren't either. I mean, we made it, that's part of our mission, is to get both sides of the story. So that irritated the hell out of me.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, when I listen to NPR, it's the most middle of the road coverage. And I just think it gets criticized by both sides, right? Like lefties think like, NPR is just covering for people it shouldn't be covering for. It gets criticized by the right. And
so if
that's how you're kind of doing all sides.
If you're pissing off both sides, then you're probably doing your job. So
exactly,
I think that's very important. Hey, well, I want to continue following this with you, and I hope we'll see if you get more feedback on this. You're going to continue to follow the story?
Yeah, no, there's more columns in the works. It all touches on immigration and the Latino community. So there'll be more.
Okay, so then I want to call you again and say, Lilly, let's talk about this article. Let's talk about that topic, okay?
Happy to. Great.
All right. Yeah. Lilly Fowler. And you can read her piece in the South Seattle Emerald. I'll put the link on the website, and so folks can go check it out. Thanks, Lilly, and we'll talk again soon. We should have lunch. I'll buy. Okay. Thanks, Lilly.
The Chino Y Chicano podcast is available on your favorite podcast provider.
You can watch the video version on YouTube, and Converge Media, a leading producer of culturally relevant content in the Pacific Northwest. We'll talk more later.